another episode of Cerebral Palsy Answers. I'm very excited this time around because this episode is very, very different from what I've been doing so far. So this this episode, I will not be doing the interview. The person that is my guest, but not my guest. He will be my interviewer and I will be the interviewee. So it will be reverse. I had the awesome pleasure of meeting David and Will in episode 24. You could see their story. And so after that, actually, David sent me a message and he said, Susie, if you ever, want to do an episode to hear your story, I would be more than happy to interview you. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea. So now he is going to do the interview. So thank you so much, David, for doing this interview. And now it's your space.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, look, delighted to be back on, and thanks very much, Susie, for the introduction. Yeah, so I'm gonna start with the first question, just saying, hey, tell us about your childhood growing up. Tell us about your family and your story growing up.
Yeah. So, wow. I am the daughter of Mexican immigrants that came to the U.S. Back in 1979. My father from Mexico City, the capital, and my mother from Tijuana, which is a border town between San Diego and Tijuana. And so they met and they came to San Diego in 1979. And I was born I have a brother who's older than me, Alex. He is 44. He was born in 1980. I'm not very good with math, David. And then I was born in 1988. And it was, I think, it was all good until my father passed away in 1990. He passed away due to cancer. And that left my mom by herself. And she was not really, she knew a little bit of English, but not so much. She knew, to get around and get by. So she, became a single mother raising two kids. My brother, Alex, has asthma. I have cerebral palsy. I was actually diagnosed a couple months prior to my father's death. So 1990 was certainly like a year, was a before and after for me, for my mom, for, the family. And that's how my story began. I was diagnosed at the age of 2 with spastic diplegia. I was born 6 months. So my mom had a condition called preeclampsia. I think that's how you pronounce it. And so that complicated my birth. And so, I was born 2 pounds, and then the next day I was 1 pound. And one of the first things they told my mom and dad at the time was, we don't really think she's going to survive, because I was so small. I practically, fit in someone's hand. And after that, they discharged me. After a month in the neonatal intensive care unit, they discharged me. But they didn't really tell my parents anything really about me, about what could be the outcome of the fact that I was born 3 months earlier. So my parents left without really no information. And then 1990 came around. My father passed away, and my mom really struggled with both of us to get us by. I come from a humble family, a low-income community, and so it was difficult for her. They were certainly very challenging years. And until a friend of hers said, you know what, Susie is not moving, she's not talking, she's not doing things that she's not hitting milestones that babies should. And my mom knew that something wasn't right, but she just didn't know where to take me. And it wasn't until this friend said, you know what, I'm going to refer you to a regional center. And regional centers here in California are supposed to help kids and people with disabilities to access services. And so this friend of my mom worked in a regional center and referred her to a regional center. And then the regional center said, you know what, we're going to send you to the Rady Children's Hospital here in San Diego. And they did. And she went in after, I think it was 3 hours, they said officially that I had cerebral palsy. And so that's in a nutshell, you know, how I was diagnosed and where I grew up. I grew up in San Isidro, which is a border town between San Diego and Tijuana. So I really didn't start speaking English properly until I was like 7 or 8. And so Spanish is my first real language. So yeah, that's the first.
Yeah,
That's a little bit
no,
about my story, David.
thanks very much for sharing, Susie. Yeah. So
Yeah.
first of all, I hope you know that I'm sure your father's looking down on you, very proud of you. So good
Oh,
on
thank
you,
you.
and good
Thank
on
you.
your great mother, strong
Mm,
mother, raising the 2 children on her own.
thank
And
you.
fair play to all the family and friends nearby that definitely helped her along the way. But she's very, very happy now that she's 2 children who've grown up now.
Oh,
So
thank you.
can we go rewind there to, you said you were born with a term called, was it spastic dysplasia?
Yeah, spastic
You,
diplegia, yes.
for anyone listening who doesn't 100% know what that is, do you want
Yeah,
to expand on that?
that's interesting because whenever I talk to, now I know how it feels because whenever I interview doctors, I'm like, please talk to us in the simplest terms. Don't assume that we all understand. So very good, David. You caught it. Yes, spastic diplegia basically means that when you have cerebral palsy is a disability that affects your motor system. So it affects your posture, your balance, and your movement, basically. And every person that has it is put in what they call a GMFSCS scale. So it's a 1 to 5, right? So the more mild cases, quote unquote, are 1s and 2s, and those are the people that can walk on their own for the most part. Some of us use like walkers or canes, but then you get the more complex cases are the 3s, 4s, and 5s, and those are the ones that depend on other family members to assist them for, you know, daily getting around or any other activities. So I'm a GMFS level 1, 1.5, I would say. I walk unassisted, but when I was growing up, I had 18 orthopedic surgeries because I was born pigeon-toed. So they had to straighten my legs. Every 2 years I had a surgery, basically. What they now call like multi-level surgery, so multiple surgeries in one. And so spastic diplegia, because there's 4 types of CP, there's spastic, there is ataxic, there's also a mixture, so you can have mixed, you can have 2 or more types of CP, and there's also dystonia. I have a spastic, which means that I have spasms in my legs. So it affected primarily my lower limbs. And so that means that my muscles get tight, that I have spasms, that I struggle with like chronic pain. So that is in a nutshell what spastic diplegia means that it affects primarily my two legs instead of like, for example, quadriplegia, which would be my 4 extremities, right?
Yeah.
In my case, it's just my legs.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing and thanks for explaining that. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I suppose the next question that came to mind there was, how did you feel preparing for surgery each time, and especially between them years when you were, I'm sure it started becoming a mental challenge to prepare yourself when you're, between age, I'm sure 8 to 18 probably is where you're most nervous or scared, but I'll let you answer what age groups and how you felt along the way. I'm sure we're pretty curious to hear what you think of, how you used to go
Yeah.
about it.
That's a great question. Um, I started having surgery at the age of 4 because the sooner a kid has surgery, the better. Now they know, now they say, because um our bones are growing, and our muscles we're still very malleable in many ways. So I started at the age of 4 up until, like, I don't know, 15. And um back then, it was, as a kid, I didn't realize my reality. I was the only kid with a disability in my school, so I definitely knew that I was different than the rest of the kids. Um, and I knew that I had to be constantly missing school. Um, and that was challenging because I really didn't have a lot of friends. And it became, at that point, I wasn't really aware of what was going on. I just what I remember thinking is, I just want to walk straight like everyone else. And I thought, if I have this surgery or that surgery, then that's going to help me walk like them. And after so many, I was like, okay, this is not, I guess it's not happening for me. And I became discouraged, and I grew tired of constantly being in medical appointments and in doctors and everything that it involved. But growing up, I wasn't aware of that. I was just going with my reality, which was, I had appointments, I had to go. But looking back, I realized that I was never truly a kid. I didn't have really a childhood, because I grew up very fast, and I was um quite often translating things for my mom. And yeah, it was challenging in that it was constantly, I felt like I was always in the hospital, and that was my home. And I had great orthopedic surgeons and doctors and things. But as a kid, um I didn't know I didn't know everything that was going on until now. Looking back, I realize how much of an impact it had in me growing up. I Because of the fact that I had to grow up very quickly, I didn't have the normal milestones of teenagers, like when you have your first girlfriend or when you have your first boyfriend. Or, for me, it was, okay, surgery number 10 and this and that. And so like I said, I had to grow up very, very quickly. And I don't know if I prepared for them. I just went with it. The doctors would say, okay, Susie, we're going to do this. And so they did it, and I said, okay, well, I guess that's what I have to do, and that's it. But, looking back now, I know that it was challenging because I had to grow up very quickly.
Yeah, yeah, no, and well done you on staying so strong through the years. Yeah, and I'm sure it built a really strong relationship between you and your mother. How did your mother cope with all these through these years?
It was very challenging for her because, like I said, she, I think moms in general are very strong and they do anything for their kids. So in that regard, she did what she had to do, right? She took me to every single appointment. She did everything she could. She did the best she could. Um, but I could see that she also got tired. It was very challenging because she had to fill the paperwork over and over again and do the same thing and the same procedure over and over. And I was the center of her universe, right? And um she kind of gave me all her time and all her life, and but then there was my brother, and she had a second marriage, and so that was also going on, and it was challenging for her to deal with all of the things that were going on because she, like I said, she didn't understand the language. And that is precisely why I do this podcast is bilingual, because I want to have information about cerebral palsy in Spanish, because I don't want parents like my mom to struggle just because they don't have access to resources in Spanish in this case, right? And I said, well, if I can produce it in Spanish, then I'll do it as well. So she's the great inspiration behind this bilingual podcast. Um, but yeah, for her it was very difficult, and I almost feel like she had her to put her own life aside and just be mom and not be a woman.
Well, fair play to your lovely mother. She sounds like a great person, and I'm sure now that you've grown a bit older, I'm sure you said she was over for dinner yesterday. I'm sure you're able to have great laughs and great time together. So
Yeah.
it brought
Yeah,
you very close together.
absolutely. Yeah. Now that I'm older, we can have great conversations and
Mm.
look back at everything we've been through together, but it certainly was a tough and challenging road.
And so it's great to hear that you had lovely orthopedic surgeons. My sister's a brilliant nurse. Did you have one particular nurse or surgeon or doctor that stands out and you just thought they changed your whole world? I know that's the power of nurses. My sister is a special girl, and I'm sure you came across many special people too that
I
sort of lightened up your
did.
day.
I did. And like I said, I grew up in the hospital. I was always at Children's Hospital. And so I always had nurses and doctors and orthopedic surgeons around me. Um, what I would do with nurses, I don't know if if they would like me, if anyone, any of the nurses that might remember me, but so I would spend a long time at Rady's Children's Hospital, right? And so I would spend, weeks and weeks in recovery after each surgery. So I basically lived there for a bit. So nurses, I was always like on my own room. And so nurses really were the only people that I got to see quite often.
Yeah.
And so they gave me this clicker, or with a button, a red button, and they said to me, if you need anything, just click the red button, whatever it is. If you need, I don't know, ice cream or whatever, right? Or if it was essentially if I had a lot of pain.
Mm.
um so I was like, okay. And again, I was like, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and it would be 3 in the morning, and I would be like, so what do I do? So I would click the button, and they would just come running, and they're like, what do you need? What do you want? And I'm like, I want ice cream. So I would, it's kind of like the girl who cried wolf, right? I would pull pranks on them all the time, and at some point when I was truly in pain, they were like, oh, it's her again. She probably just wants a cookie or something. Um, and yeah, so the nurses, I love them all. I don't have the names of, I just saw so many of them.
Yeah,
But I,
yeah,
I, I don't have one in particular that I remember, but I do remember having a lot of fun with them and then them having a good laugh. In terms of orthopedic surgeons, well, of course, my orthopedic surgeon who is now retired, and hopefully I get to talk to him someday, soon. Dr. Dennis Winger. He was brilliant, and he's the reason why I can walk. I for a long time, there was another orthopedic surgeon called Dr. Johnson, and I had the biggest crush. I was like 8 years old, and I thought I was gonna marry him, but he was like in his 40s or 50s or whatever. And my mom's like, "No, you're crazy. You're not gonna marry Dr. Johnson." I'm like, "Yes, mom. He's." I had the biggest crush. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think everyone in the hospital was amazing, and Children's Hospital it was a great place. I'm very happy that I had all my medical attention there. I have well, my whole childhood there.
yeah. No, no, it's very interesting. And to take a step away from your story for a second, one question that came to mind would be if you could change anything about the setup of hospitals. You were saying there that there's a lot of paperwork that your mother had to fill out repeatedly.
Yeah.
Would there be areas or pain points of hospital attendees that you would change about hospitals in today's world if you could click your fingers and change something about hospitals?
That's a good question. I've had surgery since the last time that I had an orthopedic surgery. I've had like 3 surgeries for other reasons. Um, I think things are much more efficient now with technology and tablets, and there is not so much a need of filling paperwork like there was back then. So I do think that we've gotten a lot better. There's telehealth now, and so that's a lot better. I can't think of anything that I would say um that I would change right now that comes up at the top of my head, to be honest. I know that the
That's good.
paperwork was a constant one for mom, but I think that's changed with tablets and iPads. And um,
Yeah,
now, for example, I can check my appointments of in Kaiser online, and so it's different. So I do think we've done a much better job.
great, great, no, great. And so the next question I have in mind was, you know, spending weeks after weeks in the hospital growing up.
Hmm.
How was your confidence then as a kid navigating through school?
Um, it was hard. I didn't understand why I couldn't walk like other kids. Um, I didn't understand why they didn't want to be my friend. I didn't understand why I was always the one that was picked last at PE class, and no one wanted me in their team. Um, yeah, it was just very difficult. I really didn't have, I think I had one friend. Katia Gomez. I don't know what happened to her. I hope I can find her someday. She was like my only real friend. As a kid, I think what you want is to fit in, right? And you want to have friends, and you want to have your clique or whatever, your group of friends. But I didn't have that, so I was very in my thoughts. I was a very lonely child in that. Um, so that was difficult, but at the same time I did art and I read, so I acquired other interests as a kid, and so that opened my world, my imagination. So I didn't have that typical, I really don't have those stories as a kid of oh, I remember when I did this or when I did that, or because I really honestly I didn't have a childhood. My mom did the best that she could, and that she bought me all the Barbies that you can think of, and all the toys. But I was like a little adult, so um, yeah, not the best, unfortunately. But it has a happy outcome because I love being an adult. So
I was just going to ask you, how are you
yeah,
doing now? You,
yeah.
much better now?
Oh, absolutely. I count my blessings, David. I am so fortunate. I am so grateful to life and to everything around me. I've had an amazing life so far. I've traveled, to 17 countries. I've lived in Spain. I went to school, went to college. I've worked in production and TV and film. Um, I've done so many wonderful things. I auditioned to be in a reality show to be the next ESPN reporter when I was 20 years old, and I almost got the job.
Wow.
It was like a reality show, and so I've just had the most amazing life as an adult. I've done everything that I've wanted and more. I can't really complain.
Brilliant. No, that's great to hear. And so tell me, two parts to this question. Tell
Mm.
us about the importance of art and reading, and for any kid who listens to this podcast who is feeling lonely and sometimes feels left out. How do you find joy in your own company and use these tools and platforms to, you know, fall in love with a different story
Mm.
and create your own path? And then the second part, I'll let you answer the first part first. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, for any kid listening, this is a great question. Um, art art is beautiful in any way that may be, whether it's painting, whether it's writing poetry, whether it's because it allows us to create alternative realities, and and we should. I think art allows us to transcend the limits of time and space, the same that literature also did for me, through reading stories and Latin American literature and magical realism. I was able to travel with my imagination, and that just gives you so much as a person. Art is beautiful, and I was able to find in art like so many talents. And the thing with like for painting example, there's no wrong or right way, as opposed to like when you play sports or yeah, or when you, I don't know, do some group. Yes, sports is the first example that comes to mind. When you're doing any sort of art, whether it's creating beads or sewing or painting, there's no right or wrong way. It's just your expression. It's your true self, and no one can tell you that is wrong or that is right. That is who you are, and that's what you can show to the world. And the other thing, and this is a bit more, is that I think the greatest achievement that we can do for ourselves is enjoy our own company, is to be okay with our own selves, because ultimately we will spend the rest of our lives with ourselves. And whether that is, some of us may get married and have children, you will have families, and some of us might not, but ultimately, when you're comfortable with yourself and who you are, um, I think that is, for me, that's been the greatest achievement, where these moments of solitude of creating art have allowed me to know who I am, what I want and what I don't want, as opposed to always trying to have, external validation, and always trying to have other people around you that says, yes, you're awesome, or yes, you're great. But when I ultimately do think that everything does come from within. And so art has allowed me to find these talents and these stories within me that I perhaps wouldn't have had the opportunity had I had a different childhood. So don't feel lonely. Don't feel like you're a failure if you don't have other friends. Um, I would say you have so much to offer to the world, and eventually, as you grow up, you will see that we all have something to contribute. And I have certainly found that in, creating a podcast is a form of art, and painting is also a form of art. In my house my house is like my little gallery. I have pictures of everything that I have painted, and then I have pictures. So I have canvases, and then I have pictures that I've taken of all the countries I've been to, and that I've made them bigger into a canvas. So when someone comes into my home, they see picture that I've taken, and they see my art. So my house is my gallery. So that is who I am. It's truly what I am. My home is who I am and what I am, because they see it in the pictures and the art and everything. The couch is yellow, so a lot of it is yellow because yellow is my favorite color. So that for me is beautiful. Art has allowed me to find sides of me that I didn't think were in existence. Yeah.
Good. No, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's great hearing you tell your story.
Thank
And
you.
I guess following up on the second part to that question, Susie, that's very powerful what you've been saying about how art can, change your whole life around really and mold you into the person you are. And it's great. And I guess the second part, when we were talking about the difference between childhood being tough and then adulthood being brilliant,
Mm.
when you're, if any 16-year-old, for example, is listening to this, or 14-year-old is listening to this, and they're hanging in there and they're persevering, like how would you best go about telling them just hold on that bit longer?
Yeah.
The day will the page will turn, and good days are only around the corner. To tell us
Yeah.
what's the turning point, or what's the, you know t- tell us what would you tell them? Hang in
Um
there.
yeah, hang in there. Things get better as you get an adult, because you get more of an idea of who you are and what you like and what you don't like. I think as a teenager, a lot of it is, your parents, and they have such a huge influence in who you are. But as you're becoming an adult, and you become, more independent and starting to find who you are as a human being, things start to change. I'm not going to say that things will get easier in that, for example, I still deal with pain and I still deal with spasms because of my CP, but I've always said it. Something, maybe it sounds cliche, and sometimes maybe it sounds, um, yeah, sounds very cliche actually, is that life is truly a gift, and we only have one. So I'm I'm grateful that that little Susie that would sometimes hide in the closet because she was afraid, and she would be in the dark and she didn't want to come out. I'm grateful that that Susie kept going.
Good woman, Susie.
It's yeah.
You're very strong and you're very inspiring. Well done.
I thank you. I yeah. Keep going, no matter what life brings at
Mm.
you. If you have a dream, if you have, and of course, I do want to mention that I recognize my own privilege in that I know that my CP is not as complex as other cases, and I am aware of that. But keep going, keep fighting.
Mm-hmm.
There's beautiful things on the other side of fear. And I think I can honestly say that you have to persevere, and that's something that we have as a person. People with disabilities have to be creative. They have to be resilient because all the odds are against us all the time. You walk outside and there's always going to be an inaccessible place to enter. So just keep going, keep fighting, and you all have something to contribute. And like I said in my website, I have a bit where it says, what makes us different in this world are not our abilities or our disabilities. It is our choices and our dreams and our ability to pursue those dreams. So keep having those
Yes,
dreams, right?
absolutely. And fear isn't the enemy, because I like this quote I saw on a slide deck on Friday here in school. I saw it said, courage isn't the lack of fear, but it's the ability to recognize the fear and still go and keep doing it.
Yeah,
So I think,
absolutely.
acknowledging the fear and, going about it. And I think this is a good point to ask you. What are you most proud of? You've overcome so many challenges. What's the one or two memories, top memories that you are just like, you'd clap for yourself and say, well done, Susie.
I love that I'm so adventurous. I love that I'm not afraid. When I graduated college, UCSD, University of California, San Diego, because I'm in California, go
Yep.
Tritons.
Yep.
Shortly after graduating, I started looking for jobs abroad, and I found this sort of cultural exchange program between Spain and the US, and where I could be a TA, a teaching assistant. And I was like, I'm going for it. And I planned it all. And one day before leaving, I told my mom, because I
Thank God.
knew that if I told her like months prior, she would try to convince me not to go. Because, she would be afraid, and you don't know.
Of
Because
course. She's your mom.
I didn't know anyone in Spain. I mean, I know the language, I know Spanish, but other than that, I didn't know anyone. And actually, I got placed in a city called Vigo, which is Galicia. I got placed in Galicia, which is northwest corner of Spain, very close to northern Portugal. And I got placed in that region first in a tiny town, right, called I don't even Burela, I think it was. But then I Googled it, and I Googled this town, and I was like, okay, I am not going to a town of 500 people. I need transportation. I need the train, the tram, whatever it is, but I need something. And because I don't drive at all, and I still don't drive, I don't have a driver license out of pure laziness, to be honest. I could learn how to drive, but I just don't want to. Anyway, so I get placed in the city. I was like, no, I am not going to this town. So the next thing I do is I go on Google and I say, biggest town in Galicia, and pops up Vigo, Vigo. And I was like, okay, I guess that's where I'm going. So I write to the coordinator of the program and say, hey, I have family in Vigo, and I need to move there. I need to be there. And so she's like, okay, cool. So we'll move you there. Bullshit, that I had no one. But it was a city. It's a city. It's a big city. It's the biggest city in Galicia. So I was like, okay, I'm going there. So I land, I leave San Diego, and then I land in Vigo, and I'm like, wow, what did I just do? I had no idea. So I am proud that I am so adventurous, that I'm not afraid to
Yeah.
take risks. That I go with my gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you think too much about things, you just don't do them. And I'm like, okay, I make decisions and I'm like, okay, for better or for worse, I'm going to pay the consequences, whatever they may be, but I'm going to do it. Right. And so
Absolutely.
I am happy that and I'm very proud of how strong I am, how self-sufficient I am, and how adventurous and how
Yes.
curious. I think curiosity is so important. When you're curious about the world and want to know more about what happens here and what happens there, and I think curiosity is so important. So I love that I'm very adventurous and very curious, and that I've taken risks in my life. I'm very proud because that's taken me to a lot of wonderful places.
Luck favors the brave. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. They're great traits to have. Adventurous and brave, and
Thank you.
taking a chance. Sometimes you got to take a chance, and it
Well,
sounds like a lot of paid
you
off.
I think you've taken a chance, right? You came to Indiana, Northern Maine,
Yep. Yeah.
from Ireland. I think
From
that's a
Ireland. Yeah.
pretty big change.
Yeah.
Actually, let me ask you, how did that come about? How did you decide to move? How did that opportunity come about, actually?
Hey, I'll answer this one question, but this podcast is about you, Susie. You're going back into your presenter mode.
Oh man, darn.
I There's a really famous, cool Irish scientist named Martin Naughton, who has a passion for entrepreneurship and technology, and
Uh-huh.
I was one of the lucky five Irish scholars who received the Naughton scholarship, and it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, really, to get a full ride scholarship to America to go to college over here. So I said, "Hey, let's go for it." I was always interested in entrepreneurship and passionate about technology too. And I thought this was a great opportunity. But hey, let's not
Ah,
talk about
that's
me. Hey,
amazing. Okay, that's
hey,
it. That
hey.
that was all my question.
Yeah,
I was just
yeah,
curious. I was curious
yeah.
because I didn't have the opportunity to ask you that in the last interview. But yeah, so you've also been brave.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, so go backpedaling there. There was, I guess, one or two words, if you want to call it two words.
Mhm.
Self-sufficient, you said. You're proud of being self-sufficient.
Yeah.
So I like that. I think that's amazing. So what I want to ask you is, being self-sufficient, that surely involves going about the everyday tasks, and maybe being like, having cerebral palsy, you might need to go about them differently. So I'd love to know, hey, tell us what sort of challenges do you overcome in a unique way every day?
Yeah. And actually I will backpedal and say more than self-sufficient, which I am, but I think I like that I'm resourceful.
Resourceful.
That I find ways to do things. I
Yes.
live on my own, and so it is a challenge to like, take a shower at times because I lose my
Yeah.
balance. So I've had to
Mhm.
accommodate things where I don't fall, or if I fall, it's not as bad. Um, I've made my house, my apartment, so that it's not a hazard for me. So I don't have like rugs, or the ones that I have, I tape them to the bottom. So I tape them to the floor so that they don't lift up, because I tend to drag my feet.
Mm.
And because I drag my feet, I fall. I bought these like special ceramic knives so that I don't cut myself, because my motor skills are not all there. And so I've had to create an environment that works for me. Um, Showering, the shower is completely sort of adapted to the best of my ability, of course. And then the carpets taped, and then the in the kitchen, I don't the kitchen is not a place I really enjoy, so I'm not a very good cook if I'm honest. Um,
Me
but
neither. If it makes you feel any better, me neither.
thank you, thank you. That makes two of us. I burn things, and I just like, oh God, and I oversalt things, and just I have no sense of. Oh my goodness, it's horrible. Because my mom is a great cook, and so I didn't inherit that talent in the kitchen. Um, but yeah, I tried to make my house work for me. I'm very fortunate that where I live, there's an elevator, so I can use the elevator. I try to walk as much as possible, and I also stretch every single day in the floor because that's important, especially as you get older. Um, and then if I need help with um I'm also very fortunate that I have neighbors that can help me out if I need something. But yeah, I don't drive, so I use public transportation, or I use Lyft or Uber, or I will simply walk. And if I don't walk, well, I do have like a cane that I can use if I'm too tired. So yeah, simple little things that I do around the house to kind of make my life easier.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And so tell me, when you were telling me there that you do things like stretching every day, tell me, do you enjoy exercise? And as a kid, did you enjoy doing your exercises? And nowadays, do you enjoy doing your exercises? And that's a common topic whenever I'm talking to people with, disabilities or coming back from a spinal
Yeah,
cord injury or anything like that.
yeah,
Yeah, tell us about your thoughts on exercises and then also the equipment you use to do your
yeah.
exercise with the age.
It's I certainly see now I see the value in exercise. When I was a kid, I hated doing therapy. I hated going to the therapist. Um,
Why?
because it was very monotonous. It was always sort of the same thing over and over again. And I just didn't, there was nothing interesting. And I felt like I couldn't adapt anything that I was learning in that environment to the outside world, because I used to go to a special center and then do the therapy there, but it wasn't adapted to the real world, if you will.
Sure.
Where now it's much different. Now I see that um the parents and the families are asked, okay, what are your goals for your child? What would you like to accomplish? It was very different back then. So I didn't really enjoy it. I hated going to therapy. But like I said, now I see the value in it. Um, I I love doing exercise. I love going out for walks. Um, and it's hard. As you get older, the thing with CP is you don't know I'm 36 years old, and so you don't know what is a natural part of aging and what is part of just having CP. So, um, in general, one of the things that is recommended for us is to always do exercise, to always walk, and to always stretch, and to always do something. And so I always try to do something and try to keep my weight at a certain level, because after a certain weight, then I start to feel like I'm dragging my feet more, like I'm
Yeah.
not walking. And so I try to exercise as much as I can, like 3 times a week, because it is very important for your joints, for your muscles, especially since with spastic diplegia, your muscles get tight very quickly. So it's so important to keep stretching and to keep moving. But as a kid, of course, I didn't see that. And now, as a older woman, I do see the value in it, and it's super important, right?
You're not that old, Susie.
Oh, Well,
Hey,
thank you.
so
I'm definitely older than you, David.
so if you only tuned into the second half of that answer,
Yeah.
I'm thinking you would have sounded like, you're describing exercise all the ways that maybe an athlete would describe exercise and talking about it. So
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, how did you or how would you recommend to people, and then maybe use your own experience, and when you're applying for jobs or when you're applying to colleges, when you're writing essays about yourself and your story,
Mm-hmm.
how do you display your superpower? Because it's basically a superpower. You're like you're a student athlete. You're putting that much attention to detail. You're that knowledgeable about a space. You can separate yourself from so many people, using your story. It's so great and lucky to have this unique story that a lot of these people have. So how do you, any advice for maybe, you know, y- people applying for jobs or college and stuff? And how did you go about it yourself? How did you tell your story in the best way?
Um, well, I think we first of all, I think we all have a story to tell. I think
Mm,
all of our stories are interesting. And how did would I go about um I think when I applied to college, I talked about my disability and that it helped me having a disability, unfortunately, I will say, taught me how to overcome obstacles and to be persistent and to keep going and to keep pushing boundaries because unfortunately this society is built around people who walk in a normal quote unquote way and who verbally express themselves, who can talk. And so whenever some of us do not fit that norm, we are faced with so many challenges. Um, so I think when I was applying to school, I said, my CP and having CP has taught me to be perseverant, has taught me to take no for, do not take no for an answer until I get a yes, and to really fight for myself and to truly advocate for myself and to look beyond just myself, but to advocate for others. And that is something that perhaps not all of us get the opportunity to get, growing up. I think when you are part of the disabled community, and I do want to say that I can only speak for myself because each of us is so different with a disability, but you learn to advocate and to be part of this community by raising your voices and want it, whether you want it or not, you sort of become a leader, your own self-advocate, because if you don't advocate for yourself, like when I started UCSD, and if I didn't go to the Disabled Student Services Center and say, I need this, I need that, I need this, no one would have done it. So you have to become a leader, but that comes with having a disability, in my opinion, because from the onset, you fight for everything. You have to fight for services. You have to fight for access. You have to raise your voice. So you become an advocate, you become a leader, and it helps you build your personality. So draw on those things that your disability has given you. Whether that is to fight for others, fight for yourself, think outside the box, create opportunities in ways that you've had to because you didn't know how to access the library. Or yeah, so I think creativity, perseverance, and leadership is something that I think having a disability for me has well, it has given me to as a person, and then I can give it back to the world. Because now I not only advocate for me, but I advocate for others, right? So, yeah.
No, it's powerful what you do. It's very powerful. I first stumbled across you in a LinkedIn group, and now I see you, sharing these stories on the podcast. It's special because there's a lot of people that want to hear these stories or want to talk to people in this space and maybe are too shy to. So it's great that you're creating a platform for people to connect. And it's very special what you are doing to help others, and it's important. So well done. How do people perceive you? And are people generally mostly nice to you, or do they look at you differently, or do they ever make you feel uncomfortable? And is it case by case, or how do you deal with it? Tell us about how people perceive you.
Um, that's a great question. Um, I think people perceive me, I think my inner circle, once people get to know me, well, they perceive me as someone who's very strong and very determined, um, and just is not afraid of going against the flow. That's how they perceive me. But then there's the outer layer. Um, I would argue maybe that some people I have felt in the past, like when I lived in Spain, I remember I would have a lot of people staring at me because of how I walked. And they would even stop me to ask me, like, hey, what happened? And I would just come up with stories. I was too tired to just tell them my entire story. Um, and, I think they would perceive me as weak or, oh my God, poor her, because she has 18 surgeries and she had to deal with all of this. Um, but I had someone tell me once, someone very close to me, he said to me how the mirror perceives you and how others perceive you is a lie because you don't perceive yourself that way. And what he was trying to say is that I I don't, at this point in my life, I don't feel sorry for myself. I never said poor me right now. 36-year-old Azucena. I don't feel sorry. And how people see me and how what the reflection shows in the mirror is not what I feel about myself. When I see myself in the mirror, I see someone who just a very strong woman, capable of doing anything that she wants and that
Yep.
she's capable. And whether or not people in the outside can see that or not, it doesn't matter to me anymore. Because I don't subscribe to what people might think of who I am as a person, right? Um, I think, you see all these dolls in the back. They're called little
Mm-hmm.
matryoshka dolls. And so it's like one of those dolls that you open up and then there's one, and then you open that one, and then there's another one. I think I'm very much like a matryoshka doll. There's many layers to me. And so I think what people in in the outer circle perceive of me is just one aspect, and whether they're sorry or whether they assume that I can't have or can't do certain things, at this point it doesn't really matter to me, because how I perceive myself is a woman who is strong and in that she knows what she wants, and that is the
Good
most
woman.
important thing.
Absolutely, Susie. Good woman. So what I'm getting from this call is there's a big transformation mentally over the years. So you've
Mm.
grown, not only grown up as a person, but even you've transformed, and you've became stronger and more powerful. And I guess if you're to give I don't know what age you want to choose, 15-year-old Susie a few words of advice, what would you go back and tell yourself if you could go back in time and tell yourself?
Oof. First, one, don't waste your time on boys and men that don't care for you. Don't waste your time on that. Don't waste your time on that. Don't keep looking for men or guys to like you. First, you have to like yourself. And so, but at that time, I didn't know that. And I wasted a lot of time thinking and believing that if I acted a certain way, then guys would like me more or men would like me more. And I wasted a lot of time in that. And ultimately, I had to learn that I have to be myself and that I have to like me, who I am. So don't waste your time trying to go around boys and men. That is a waste of time. And then 2 is dream big. Keep dreaming big. Keep pushing the limits of your life. Don't be afraid. And actually, that's an advice I would continue to give myself as a 30-year-old because, believe it or not, David, I have my days where I feel low and I feel sad and I question everything, right? But then I think, no, keep dreaming big, keep pushing the limits, keep being yourself, don't be afraid, be bold, and have those big dreams because you will achieve them. So yeah, don't waste time because time passes by without asking for permission. So don't waste your time with people who don't care. And then 2 is keep being bold and strong and having big dreams.
Hey, and so one thing you touched on there, it's a common thing. So we all have these days where, you're questioning everything. I guess when you look into the public speakers about this and maybe even research, how important is routine to you? Does that help overcome whenever you are feeling down?
It's an
A lot of people lean into routine. What are your thoughts on routine, or do you have a getaway or an escape?
I'm not gonna lie and pretend like I have a routine. I don't. I mean, I get my coffee. I wake up early. I wake up about 7 a.m. Well, earlier, like at 6 a.m. and I just contemplate things and I think of my day and I begin my day being grateful for all the things that I have. So
Mm.
I do begin my day with gratitude around, 6:30, and then around 7 I'm already up and thinking, what am I going to do? Um I'm trying to meditate more often to see, what I need to, because a lot of these fears I realize come from my head. A lot of these doubts come from my head. And, believe it or not, whenever, for example, I get to interview someone on the podcast, I'm super nervous and I'm so anxious and people don't believe me. They're like, "Well, you studied communication." Well, yeah, I did, but I'm still very nervous and anxious. But in the end of it, I realized that it's all in my head because at the end it all went well. And so I tried to, kind of calm my thoughts, my negative thoughts, and okay, they are there and let them go. I think it's important for me. The only thing I would say is wake up early, be grateful for everything that you have, and kind of have an idea of um, what your goal is for the day and then for the long run. For example, with this podcast, um, sometimes I feel like, oh, I could have done it better, or maybe I shouldn't keep going. Maybe this is it, And because sometimes the numbers aren't out there, it's like I don't get the thousands of listeners and things, and I'm like, no, but it makes me happy and I know it's making a difference, however small. It's making a difference, so just keep going. So just
Yes.
always have whatever it is your end goal, just have it in mind, because I think ultimately we do have the power of transforming our thoughts and our realities. And so for me, it's important to wake up early, be grateful, and think long term, like what are my goals for today, and then my long term goals. And that's about it. Other than that, I don't have much of a routine. I have a very calm life, if I'm honest, if I'm not traveling, of course. But yeah, that's all.
No, great answer. It's great to express the gratitude. And do you do that in the form of writing on a diary, or do you do it in your head, or do you
No,
pray,
I
or
do it out loud.
out
I
loud?
list, I say, thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you for this and this and that. Always say thank you. And I just find that comes around because I have just, especially now, I'm so grateful for all the wonderful things that I have in my life and all the people that I meet. And I find that every time I say thank you and I'm grateful, more things come to me. And everyone wants to be around positivity and energy that elevates your spirit. So I always, I think if there's something I would say is just always be grateful for everything that you
Yeah.
have, however small or big. Just be grateful and say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you every single day. That's
Yeah.
basically all
It's
I did.
great advice, and you'll instantly make yourself happy when you do start thinking of all the lucky good things.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you for taking the time to do this interview, for putting me on the spot. I have to we have to share with people that you did send me, some of the questions, but I just briefly saw them and I liked them and I thought, oh my God, David can be totally a journalist.
Yeah.
But then after that, I didn't look them over much further. So this interview is totally, I mean, I had an idea, right? But these are truly answers that are coming from the heart. So thank you so much, David, for taking the time to do this awesome video.
Yeah.
Well, more than video, interview, which will be available in video version on YouTube. You can go to my
Yeah.
YouTube channel. And yeah, you can follow up with me in a couple years and see how I'm doing.
And thank you very much, Susie, for having me on to ask you to get to hear your wonderful story. If it wasn't me
Uh,
asking the questions, I would love to listen in as a listener. I probably will listen back again.
Ah, thank you,
So yeah,
David.
no, it's great. It's great hearing your story. You're
Mm,
super inspiring, and
thank you.
I wish you all the best of luck in your next 3 months, next 2 years, next 5 years, all the way. We'll be in touch, and I hope
Yeah.
everyone listening got an enjoyable listen out of this. And
Oh,
take care
thank
of
you,
it.
David.
Thanks very much, Susie, for doing that and answering so brilliantly and honestly.
Thank you, David. And one of the things that I certainly have to be very grateful to this podcast is the fact that I've gotten to meet people like you. So thank you so much from the very first moment that we connected through LinkedIn and look at us now, now you're interviewing me and you're going to follow up with me in 2 years and I'm going to follow
Yeah,
up with you in 5. So
yeah,
I'm very grateful that we got connected and that we crossed paths, and I'm sure that we will continue to see each other. So thank you so much.
absolutely. We'll keep in touch. So thank you. If you'd like to wrap it up from here, I'll let you do the closing out. But well
Yeah,
done.
so that's it. We wrap it up. That's it for today. And so Alex will be listening in the next episode of Cerebral Palsy Answers, but that is it for today. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me in another episode of the Cerebral Palsy Answers podcast. And remember, if you have any questions regarding cerebral palsy in Spanish or English, please submit your question to cerebralpalsyanswers@gmail.com or head over to my website, www.azucenagarcia.com, and you can submit your question there. Thank you.